Even after being in the game for so long, I think that finding a mushroom island has still got to be one of the coolest experiences that you can have. Compared to the mostly realistic biomes that fill up the overworld, the whimsical nature of the mushroom fields really makes it something special. And that's why I'm not terribly surprised that you guys have been suggesting that I do this one for quite some time, and it also easily won out in the fan vote against a regular swamp and an ice spikes biome as well. This is undoubtedly one of my favorite biomes in the game, and I've really been looking forward to converting this into LEGO. So without further ado, let's build this thing. I've decided to go all out with this one. We're going to be using a full chunk of space. That's 32 by 32 LEGO studs, or 16 by 16 blocks in the game. We want this thing to be completely surrounded by water, and I think the best way to do that while still having a substantially sized island is just to make this a bigger module. In fact, the only other module that has been this size is the village from episode 3. We'll be placing down trans blue bricks where possible, and then dark blue and regular blue bricks as well, just to get that deep, rich blue color that the game has. Of course, the water also needs to sit a plate shorter than the land. As in the game, it does not come up a whole block as well. So that means I'm going to utilize a lot more plates for this build to make that happen. I've been getting a lot of trans blue 2x2s in preparation of doing more ocean builds, which has been another very popular suggestion. Hopefully this mushroom island paves the way to eventually have things going on underneath the water surface as well. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be quite the process, but we'll get there eventually. Like I said, I need a lot of plates to make this happen, just to make sure that water sits exactly where I want to. These colors won't be seen, so I'm going to be using a bunch of 2x8s I got from a Toys R Us store build a long time ago. Like I discovered in the Mangrove Swamp build, dark blue looks the best sitting underneath the 1x2 tiles that we'll eventually cover the surface with. It's just the closest match to trans dark blue. I do try to make these builds actually as hollow as possible for a number of reasons. It makes the build lighter overall, makes plates easier to stack on top, and it will eventually be easier to take apart one day. And of course, it just uses less parts, which is more cost effective. Of course, before I start tiling all the water off, I gotta figure out how big this island is going to be. I mapped out the original thing in Minecraft first, as I do with all these builds, and we're gonna get a nice mixture of stone and dirt. I want to have some exciting terrain going on this island. It could have very easily been just a very flat, circular plain, but I think if we get a little cliff, hopefully with the waterfall, it'll be much more interesting. So glad I picked up so many 1x2 trans dark blue tiles. I'm going to put them all to use eventually. We'll start work on that cliff face, which is just going to be very simple to a lot of the things we've done before. We've built cliffs before for that jungle to lush cave transition. Again, the blocks used in this biome are very simple. It's a lot of stone, dirt, and mycelium. That's pretty much it. LEGO has depicted a mushroom island in a set before where they used dark bluish gray for mycelium. I think I can do a little better, get some more color in here by using lavender. Of course, my dream color for this block would be sand purple, but the parts inventory for sand purple is even more limited than sand red, which I barely pulled off for the Mesa biome. Honestly, I love the vibrance that lavender brings. We don't have any purple yet on the build, and I think it's a good fit. It brings even more whimsy to this really fun biome. We'll tile off this entire thing with a bunch of parts I picked up from LEGO Pick-a-Brick, featuring a few jumper plates as well, where we'll add our mushrooms and also smaller printed mushrooms. Including both types of giant mushrooms is an absolute must for this biome. I've done both types of mushrooms before, but I want to do something different this time. I want to try to make them as smooth on the underside as absolutely possible, as has kind of been the theme of this whole series. Elevating LEGO Minecraft to be something very technically complicated and hopefully good looking at the same time. Because of the way giant red mushrooms generate in-game, they're not exactly possible to recreate 100% accurately in LEGO because the sides aren't even connected to the main stock. I'm gonna cheat a little bit by having an extra brick and a plate down the center. It will be nearly impossible to see unless you're directly underneath it. This is a compromise that I just need to make it look as good as possible and also even just hold together. For the sides, I'm simply going to use 1x1 round tiles in white, and then we're going to tile these things off with the combination of 2x2 corner tiles and 2x2 regular tiles in red. It's a pretty smooth and effective look. These will just snap onto the 1x4 snot bricks on each side. As you can see, they're mostly smooth except for the underside of that 2x6 brick, which of course you need to attach these things. Overall, it's a very satisfying result. And as you can see, most of the inside is smooth, so as you look from a slight angle underneath, all you're going to see is smooth sides, which is exactly what we want. The large brown mushroom becomes especially complicated because it is only 1 block thick, and of course it is much easier to see on the underside of that, so there really is no studs or anti-studs that we can have showing on this thing. So I've used some pretty wild snot techniques to accomplish this. There are plates facing in all directions, but the result is actually something that's quite strong and looks really good. It's got texture on both the top and bottom. To differentiate the mushroom stock from, say, like a quartz block or even a wool block, I'm gonna add just, again, some subtle texture on it as well with more 1x1 round white tiles, just going up the length of it at random intervals. It makes it look a little bit more interesting, but still is subtle enough to pass as just a regular mushroom stock. We'll put the brown mushroom on the lower tier, provide some shade for our mushrooms, and then the red mushroom will go up on top of the cliff, adding some really nice height to this thing as well. Of course, in addition to these giant mushrooms, there are also smaller mushrooms that populate these islands. For these, I'm going to be using an old 2x2 printed dish plate that conveniently only comes in 2 colors. You guessed it, red and dark tan. Of course, this build is not complete without some mushrooms. The only modifications I've made to these is tiled off their backs, and in the case of the adults, I've actually swapped out the plates for jumpers on the top so the mushrooms are a little more centered on their backs. The one thing I really wasn't satisfied with was the appearance of the red mushrooms, specifically on the sides. It didn't have enough spots, so I went back, deconstructed a little bit, and added some white pips on the edges, and I think that helps so much. The mushroom island, of course, will not connect to any of the main modules as is right now because there is no water. However, it does attach to the mangrove swamp. Guys, you're just gonna have to trust me. This is gonna play out over quite a few episodes, but all of this is going to come together at some point and connect to the main module. For now, it's just these two, but we're slowly going to bring this together into something truly, truly epic. But that is it. That is the Mushroom Island. And I'm really glad I could bring this one to life. Up next is a big one. It's episode 10. This thing has been going for 10 episodes already. So it seems fitting that next episode should be one of the most requested modules. And we'll be doing, finally, the Pillager Outpost. This is one that is going to pair so wonderfully with those pillagers that we set up in episode 3. By becoming a channel member by hitting the join button below, you can actually watch this episode today, early. It's awesome. And you're supporting future episodes while you're at it. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great life, and I'll see you next time.